former armed special ops agents transform into desperate robbers. The leader coldly fires a shot into the bank manager's chest. The crowd instantly panics. In contrast, the robbers, perfectly coordinated, quickly subdue all the security guards. At the same time, a Bluetooth speaker is thrown into the middle of the hall, emitting a cold voice. "Everyone get down, hands on the floor." Hearing the recording, everyone immediately complies, fearing they might lose their lives in the next second. The bank employees also don't dare to resist, hastily opening the safe. The entire robbery takes only 2 minutes. The robbers successfully make off with $3 million. Before leaving, they leave behind a motion-activated bomb. The cold voice once again echoes through the bank. "If anyone stands up or calls the police within 15 minutes, this bomb will detonate immediately, and then none of you will have a way out alive." As they leave, the leader approaches the surveillance camera, looking up at the screen. The next second, a loud explosion rings out. The FBI receives the report 25 minutes after the crime occurred. The group of robbers has disappeared into the city's alleys. They acted decisively, with perfect coordination, leaving behind only a bomb with a fingerprint at the scene. Besides that, there are no other clues. Hearing the agent recount the case, Secretary Jonathan is extremely puzzled. Why, after a successful robbery, did the robbers kill the bank manager? Was there a deeper motive behind it? Jonathan immediately wants to find evidence to track down a lead, but his subordinate informs him that the bomb had already been taken away by the police. Knowing the police had interfered in the case makes him furious. Back at the police station, Jonathan angrily seeks out Police Chief Brian, questioning why he interfered in the case and demanding he hand over the clue. Faced with pressure from his superior, Brian helplessly complies. He says that the technical department used the fingerprint to identify a robber named James. His file shows he once served in the United States Special Forces. In 2011, James and his team turned traitor out of greed, kidnapping a hostage and extorting a huge sum of money from their family. However, before the transaction, an internal conflict led them to accidentally kill the hostage. Afterward, the U.S. military received orders to raid, executing James and his team on the spot. Only his younger brother, Ranger, survived. After the incident, Police Chief Brian and his agents arrested the hot goods dealer, Ranger. They suspect Ranger himself committed the crime, using some technology to plant his brother's fingerprint at the scene to mislead the investigation. But at this moment, the new agent, Wells, also brings a piece of news. When the bank was robbed, Ranger was shopping in a store. He had no time to commit the crime. Jonathan recalls the robbers' seamless coordination. Those men had skills and agility no less than special ops agents. So why would they make such a rookie mistake as leaving a fingerprint? Clearly, they were being led astray by their opponent. While the agents are at a dead end, the robbers haven't stopped. They continue their operations, targeting another bank. They quickly subdue the bank manager, threatening the lives of his wife and daughter, forcing him to follow their orders. The manager dares not resist, puts on an earpiece, and tries to remain calm as he enters the bank. Then, under the pretext of buying breakfast, he sends his colleagues away and follows their instructions to open the safe. Knowing the manager has succeeded, the robbers immediately head to the bank and happen to bump into a female employee who is just leaving. Seeing the robbers about to enter, the female employee hastily prepares to press the alarm, but is stopped by the manager. The robbers repeat their old trick, throwing the speaker that plays the recording and once again quickly gaining control of the situation. But unlike last time, this time they don't steal cash, but take all the documents from the safe. What's more surprising is that the robbers even proactively treat the injured security guards wound. As they retreat, they even find a female employee to help with first aid and stop the bleeding. Clearly, they are not indiscriminate killers. So why did the bank manager from the last time have to die? At the same time, a black car stops in the rain. The bank manager is preparing to get out of the car for work when a robber suddenly yanks the door open. The pull is so strong it makes him writhe in pain. Before he can react, the robber drags him unceremoniously out of the car, pressing him onto the soaked ground. Next, a bullet appears before his eyes. Seeing this, the manager's face instantly fills with panic as if a horrific memory has returned. The next second, a sharp knife cuts through the air and stabs straight into his throat. Fresh blood mixes with the flowing rainwater. Watching the manager struggle in agony, the robber's eyes show both the satisfaction of a revenger and a sense of commemorating something lost. That special bullet finally falls to the ground with the rainwater, becoming a silent witness to this bloody revenge. The bank owner, Jeffrey, quickly receives news that 2 of his subordinate banks have been robbed in succession, sending him into a rage. To Jeffrey, $3 million is nothing, But the stolen documents are extremely important because behind them lies an earth-shattering secret of Jeffrey's. Facing 2 consecutive bank robberies, Secretary Jonathan is equally troubled. Besides the bullet with the fingerprint, the robbers left no other clues. What confuses him even more is their contradictory behavior. Killing a bank manager while also saving an injured security guard. What is hidden behind this case that the robbers are going to such lengths for? Afterward, Jonathan interrogates the surviving bank manager, thinking he wouldn't get any useful information, but it unexpectedly brings a new breakthrough in the case. He asks, "Does the bank owner, Jeffrey, come to the bank often?" To Jonathan's question, the manager reveals that Jeffrey has a distinguished background, owning nearly 3,000 bank branches nationwide. Given his status, he rarely pays attention to the situation of small branches. Even at his largest bank, he only visits twice a year, let alone this one, which is just an unremarkable branch. Logically, he and Jeffrey would probably never have a chance to meet in their entire lives. But the unusual thing is that Jeffrey frequently visits this small branch. Every day at closing time, he even specifically checks the safe. Such unusual behavior makes Jonathan quickly realize that something is wrong. Next, a colleague reports a shocking piece of information. Based on the bill's serial numbers, they confirm that the $3 million had been donated to a charity. Such an important piece of information, and Police Chief Brian once again failed to report it. Jonathan can finally no longer tolerate it. He arranges for the new agent, Wells, to investigate alongside Brian. Meanwhile, the technical department extracts the fingerprint from the bullet and once again identifies the deceased James. Jonathan, of course, knows the dead cannot come back to life, but both times the robbers left clues, they pointed to James. Could this be implying there's a hidden story behind the kidnapping years ago? He suppresses the doubts in his heart and immediately sends Stockwell to investigate Jeffrey more deeply. The next day, the bank manager's funeral proceeds as planned. Jeffrey is also present. Accompanying him is a United States congressman. The deaths of 2 branch bank managers could bring out these 2 major figures. Agent Stockwell, who is monitoring the situation, immediately reports back. As the clues gradually emerge, will Jonathan's suspicions prove correct? Brian reluctantly investigates with Wells. They get a lead from a witness. This person claims to be a security guard at a jewelry store near the robbed bank. Due to professional vigilance, he had discreetly recorded the license plate of a suspicious vehicle. With the lead, the 2 immediately run a check, and the suspect once again points to Ranger. Brian immediately orders his subordinates to apprehend Ranger. At the same time, back at headquarters, Jonathan suddenly receives a mysterious file. Thinking it's more investigation documents, he is surprised to find a photo of the congressman with his boyfriend. This discovery stuns the entire FBI team. The photo was clearly sent intentionally by the robbers. Combining this with previous clues, Jonathan decides to talk to Jeffrey. The next day, he immediately goes to the bank's headquarters to meet Jeffrey and specifically mentions his deceased younger brother. The file shows that Jeffrey's brother was the victim who died in the kidnapping years ago, but facing Jonathan's probing, he remains calm, showing no cracks. However, Jonathan's next sentence completely shatters Jeffrey's facade. "Why did you keep the compromising documents on your friends a secret?" Jeffrey instantly realizes Jonathan's visit is not just a courtesy call and orders security to escort him out of the headquarters. The conversation does not end well. At the same time, the robbers begin their third operation. This time, their target is the bank headquarters itself. The robbers act swiftly, with clear roles, providing cover for each other as always. They quickly infiltrate the bank's main lobby. At this time, security inside is tight. The place is bustling with customers making transactions. The difficulty of this robbery far exceeds the previous ones. Yet, with their seamless coordination, the robbers still successfully infiltrate. They prepare to use cables to break into the central area. Just then, Jonathan also arrives. His roar immediately shatters the silence. The crowd panics, and screams erupt. The robbers take this opportunity to seize a security guard as a hostage. At that moment, Jeffrey suddenly appears. Seeing him, the robbers are immediately filled with killing intent. The gun accidentally goes off, hitting the security guard. Jonathan also takes the opportunity to fire, hitting one of the robbers. The shootout officially begins. It was thought that the shot robber was dead. Unexpectedly, while another security guard is grappling with a robber, the dead robber suddenly gets up and acts. Realizing the disadvantageous situation, Jonathan has no choice but to get Jeffrey to retreat first. He quickly moves Jeffrey to a safe area, then returns to deal with the situation. Along with the injured security guard, Jonathan struggles to break through the encirclement. By now, the robbers have gained the absolute upper hand. They immediately give chase. After a tense battle, only one bodyguard remains by Jeffrey's side, but he is also exhausted. But the surprising thing is that the robber in front of them does not make things difficult for the bodyguard. Their ultimate target from start to finish has been only one person, Jeffrey. On the robber's command, the bodyguard drops his weapon, but his comrade suddenly turns into a killing machine. During this chaos, Jonathan fires a shot, hitting the aggressive robber, and at the same time takes him hostage. Hearing this, his comrade immediately grabs a female employee as a hostage for an exchange. After negotiations, the two sides reach an agreement for the exchange. Jonathan knows that if he lets the robber go, he too will likely not escape death. But surprisingly, the robber keeps his promise, letting him go and ordering his comrades not to shoot. Afterward, they quickly withdraw from the scene. The FBI immediately seals off the scene, trying to find clues on the dead robber's body, but still comes up with nothing. Later, the technical department examines the body and finds that the subject not only burned off his fingerprints with fire, but even pulled out all his teeth, completely severing any possibility of tracing his identity. Combined with their professional military skills, the agents speculate that this group of robbers is very likely former special ops. The trail goes cold again. In another development, Brian receives a call from his subordinate reporting that Ranger has been found. Brian and Wells immediately head to the location. But inside the room, they only find Ranger's sister-in-law, Martha. She says that ever since James died, every time Ranger visits, he brings money for her and her children to help them get by. Just as Brian thinks he'll leave empty-handed, he receives another report from his subordinate that Ranger has been spotted in a house. That place is very likely where the stolen money is hidden, but Brian hides this news from Wells. It turns out his wife has long been suffering from cancer, but with his meager salary, he cannot afford the enormous medical expenses. Recalling his wife's pained expression, his eyes become more resolute, and he finally makes a decision. The next day, Jonathan receives another anonymous file. It's clearly from the robbers again, but when he sees the contents, he is utterly shocked. The file documents Jeffrey's entire criminal history in full detail. The secret he had hidden for so many years is finally completely exposed. It turns out the sensational kidnapping from years ago was orchestrated by Jeffrey himself to compete for the family inheritance, to clear an obstacle. Jeffrey had bribed a high-ranking military official, fabricating a counter-terrorism order, requiring James's Army Special Forces unit to carry it out immediately. Receiving the order, they dared not be negligent, quickly raiding the target house and eliminating all the terrorists inside. But after the mission was over, the team was horrified to realize that the terrorists before them were a group of unarmed college students. Among them was Jeffrey's own younger brother. The team couldn't believe it, suspected the order was flawed, and immediately reported it to their superiors. But before they could uncover the truth, they were ambushed and fired upon by another Special Forces team. They swarmed in, launching a fierce attack on James's team. The Special Forces team acted professionally, while James's team was completely unprepared. Under the enemy's overwhelming firepower, the members fell one by one. From there, Jeffrey's conspiracy is completely revealed. He had bribed a congressman to use his power, using others to kill his brother, and then smoothly obtained the family inheritance. Next, he bribed his superiors to eliminate James's team, framing them as traitors to cover up his crime. To ensure the plan was flawless, Jeffrey had also bribed 3 members of the team beforehand: the 2 bank managers who were previously killed by the robbers, and the congressman who appeared at James's funeral. They used excuses not to participate in the mission. After James's team was wiped out, these 3 were recruited by Jeffrey. One was sponsored to become a congressman, and the other 2 were placed in the banking system and became managers. This is also the real reason for their close relationship. Jeffrey thought his secret would be buried forever. He would enjoy a life of wealth and power. Little did he know, to prevent his accomplices from turning on each other, he had kept evidence of the crime, which was stolen by someone else, exposing this horrific conspiracy once again. And the masterminds behind all of this are the surviving Special Forces members from that counterterrorism mission. After the incident, they gradually realized they had been used by Jeffrey, forced to kill the very comrades with whom they had served the country. That regret gnawed at their conscience day and night, causing them sleepless nights, living in misery. The group had long made a pact, and after being discharged, they regrouped to begin their revenge, determined to make Jeffrey and his accomplices pay. The robbers have reassembled and will eliminate all the traitors and the person behind them. They deserve justice. Knowing the whole truth, Jonathan immediately devises a plan. He speculates that Ranger is definitely connected to the bank robbery and that the money Ranger gives to Martha is very likely the stolen money. He instructs Wells and Stockwell to investigate along this line. At the same time, Brian, through monitoring Ranger, has confirmed that the money is indeed in the old house. He and his subordinate decide to go together at dawn to retrieve the huge sum of money. As the investigation deepens, the truth of the past is broadcast by major television networks, and the injustice suffered by James and his team is finally cleared. Jeffrey, watching the news, senses his impending downfall, hastily packs his luggage, preparing to flee. Jonathan also guesses his plan. On one hand, he arranges for Wells to investigate planes under Jeffrey's name to prevent his escape. On the other hand, he personally goes to the bar where James's girlfriend works. He has always suspected that James is still alive. That dawn, Brian successfully meets with his comrades, but unable to bear the torment of his conscience, he suddenly has a change of heart, trying to pull the other two back to the path of righteousness. However, his comrades have been blinded by money and completely ignore Brian's advice. At this very moment, Jonathan finds James in the bar. The man, alive and well before him, proves his suspicion was correct. Afterward, James is taken to the Federal Bureau of Investigation for questioning. Based on the existing clues, Jonathan speculates that the other party may have become the lead robber out of revenge. But James completely denies this accusation. The truth of the case once again hits a dead end, and Brian has also parted ways with the other two on bad terms. The remaining two quickly head towards their target, unaware of the danger lurking. But what they cannot believe is that the millions of dollars they imagined are not there. Just as the two are in shock, the piercing sound of police sirens rings in their ears. They now understand they have been set up. One of them resists frantically, but is shot down by the police on the spot. The other one sees this, raises his hands in surrender, and is also arrested. At the same time, at the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Jonathan also receives news that Brian's subordinates have been arrested. Just then, a disheveled Brian returns. Jonathan laughs sarcastically, saying he came back to confess. Then Jonathan curiously asks Brian how they knew where the money was hidden. He replies that it was from an informant. Faced with a Brian who repeatedly refuses to share information, Jonathan finally explodes, questioning why he hid the license plate number. Brian then drops a bombshell, saying that Wells also knew this clue. Hearing this, Jonathan is stunned into silence because his subordinate never mentioned it. Realizing something is wrong, Jonathan immediately checks Wells's file. The file records that he served in the same Army Special Forces unit that Jeffrey had used. Afterward, he abruptly switched careers from Special Forces to an FBI agent. Jonathan immediately realizes that Wells knew the truth of the past and deliberately used his authority to provide clues to the robbers, with the aim of getting revenge on Jeffrey. So Wells is the real mastermind robber. The truth is finally revealed. Stockwell, who had trusted Wells, is caught in a dilemma. Jonathan immediately orders a manhunt for Wells. Dozens of police cars quickly set out. At this time, Stockwell has also located Jeffrey. The two immediately set out to arrest Jeffrey, but it is too late. Jeffrey has escaped on a helicopter. The revenge plan seems successful, but Wells cannot control his emotions. He frantically fires, trying to shoot down the helicopter. This action immediately displeases Stockwell. As soon as he finishes speaking, the other robbers suddenly appear on the rooftop with guns. Stockwell now realizes. It turns out Wells is the real mastermind. Surrounded, he knows he has no chance of winning, but still tries his best. He takes down the surrounding robbers, then throws the mastermind to the ground. The anger of being deceived turns into a flurry of punches raining down on Wells. Seeing this, Wells's comrades immediately use their rifle butts to knock Stockwell unconscious. At the same time, dozens of police cars arrive with sirens blaring. Jonathan quickly rushes to the rooftop with a gun, but is still a step too late. On the rooftop, only the injured Stockwell remains. Wells and his accomplices have disappeared. After this incident, Brian has completely changed. He once saw a map in Wells's car and followed his memory to find the location. At this moment, Wells is moving the money, spotting Brian. He warns him to leave. But Brian, because his wife doesn't have much longer to live, has broken down. He believes the mistakes he made led to this outcome. Now, he only wants to atone for his wife and fulfill his duty as a police officer. Seeing that Brian remains unmoved, Wells finally pulls the trigger. However, after a moment of internal conflict, he reports Brian's location to the police and then continues his pursuit of Jeffrey. Jonathan also does not give up the hunt. Finally, a few months later, they find traces of Jeffrey in Mexico. Jonathan is certain that Wells will be there too, so he sets off alone. When they meet again, Jonathan looks at Wells with a complex expression, a mix of pity, confusion, and an indescribable sadness. Wells looks at Jonathan and confesses his long-held torment. The wrongful killings that year haunt him like a nightmare. every second of every minute. Actually, right from the start of the mission, he felt something was wrong. But with the belief that a soldier's duty is to obey orders, he still chose to comply. However, as the mission progressed, the unease in his heart grew stronger, until only James was left. Seeing the look of confusion and horror in James's eyes, he became completely certain of his suspicion. They had been used by their superiors to kill the wrong people. Knowing the truth, he and his comrades pretended to carry James's body out, thereby saving his life. But there is no real winner in this battle. James has since lost his identity. A soldier dedicated to his country is now just a criminal forced to hide in the shadows. And Wells and his comrades are tormented day and night by guilt. All this tragedy stems from Jeffrey's ridiculous power struggle. Therefore, they must have their revenge. Facing an obsessed Wells, Jonathan can't help but question, so what about the innocent people who died unjustly? Jonathan's voice echoes endlessly in Wells's ears. He begins to explain incoherently. Killing the security guard was not his intention. It was just that he was in a difficult position at the time. Seeing his panicked expression, an indescribable emotion wells up in Jonathan's heart. This revenge in the name of justice has been distorted. The guilt and torment that have been building for so long finally overwhelmed Wells. The two then continue to argue about whether to execute Jeffrey. I once trusted you, and you betrayed me. I will trust you one more time. Don't make me regret it. After speaking, Jonathan walks straight towards Jeffrey. Jeffrey is not panicked at all. On the contrary, he is still incredibly arrogant. Seeing this, Jonathan can't help but feel bitter. The army soldiers who dedicated themselves to the country were framed and died unjustly by his hand, while the mastermind enjoys life in a foreign country. This world is truly absurd. Jeffrey still doesn't know the disaster that is about to befall him. He thinks that by escaping to Mexico, he can be safe. He even threatens Jonathan that if he dares to touch a single hair on his head, a wanted poster with a sky-high price will be plastered all over Mexico. Jonathan doesn't care. After locating the safe, Jeffrey finally has to pay for his crimes. Everyone around who witnesses this scene runs away in fear. Jeffrey's bodyguard sees his boss is injured, immediately draws his gun to shoot, but is spotted by Wells, who quickly shoots him down. But immediately after, Jonathan also points his gun at Wells. In his heart, Wells sought revenge for justice, but he had strayed from his original purpose and committed unforgivable sins. Just as the two are in a standoff, Wells suddenly lowers his gun and turns to leave. He entrusts his fate to Jonathan. His figure gradually moves from darkness to the light in the distance. The chains that had bound Wells for so long are finally broken. Jonathan watches Wells's figure fade into the light and finally lowers his gun. Today's story ends here. Thank you for watching. What do you think of this film?